Deep behind enemy lines in FEMA Region 9 in Las Vegas, Nevada. Here's your host, Matt Maldonado, on Madness4life News. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Matt Maldonado here in FEMA Region 9 in Las Vegas, Nevada. This is podcast number 10, June 24th, 2012, the Sunday edition. And what you just heard was Close to Modern's Before We Drown. You can follow them on Facebook, Twitter, and their website is closetomodernmusic.com. And you can follow them also on reverbnation.com. Anyway, getting into the news here. Western Man in Crisis, Technology, Terror, and the Journey of the Soul. U.S. plans more drone flights over Caribbean beach. Weaponized bird flu research published as virus just mutation away from pandemic. Even the AMA recommends pre-market safety testing of GMO foods. So let's get into that right now. I don't know why, but I have to find it. Here we go. InfoWars. Here we go. InfoWars.com. Western Man in Crisis, Technology, Terror, and the Journey of the Soul. So let's get into that. For as the philosophers say, one extreme can be well known by another. St. John of the Cross, Dark Night of the Soul, Book 1, Chapter 12. It now remains to be said that although this happy night brings darkness to the spirit, it does so only to give it light in everything, and that although it humbles it and makes it miserable, it does so only to exhort it and to rise it up. And although it improves it and empties it of all nature, affection, and attachment, it does so only that it may enable it to stretch forward divinely, and thus to have fruition and experience of all things, both above and below, yet to preserve and unrestrict liberty of spirit in them all. St. John of the Cross, Dark Night of the Soul, Book 2, Chapter 9. But does not the expression of these desires and expressions of a praising of the Spirit, a catharsis which would be like a conversation, a rebirth, a regeneration, involve us in a construction with something we established in the beginning of this book. There we said that earlier periods in their longing for a better society had fixed their hopes on a reversal and insight, a regarding of sense and virtue as a consents and earlier change for the better. Our insight. No, our time, however, knows that great spiritual and social changes are released only through a process of gradual development as the best temporary by some extraordinary sudden pendas, and yet we are now demanding and hoping for a revolution in a way, even for a return. We are here faced again with the antinomic determination, with the inconclusiveness, there we go, of all our judgment. We are forced to recognize a certain amount of truth in the order version. There must be a possibility of conversation and reversal in the development of civilization. We are thinking here of the recognition or retrieval of internal truths that are above the stream of evolution and change. It is these views that are at stake. A time of heavy metal pressure such as that in which we are living is easier to bear for the old than the young. The old know that they only have to help carry the burden of the times a little further. Resentedly, they reveal how the world was or seemed to be when they begin to shoulder their share of the burden, and what appears to be turning into now their yesterday, and to mirror almost faded into one. Their fears and carries grow lighter in the proximity of death. Their hope and trust, their will and their courage to act, they place in the hands of those who have the task of living still before them. It is for the latter to accept the grave duty of judging, choosing, working, acting. There's the heavy responsibility. There's the knowledge of what is to come. Jonathan Huizinga in The Shadow of Tomorrow, 1936, Chapter 21. The world is on the precipice of World War III. The situation in Syria is heating up as the United States and its allies continue to arm the largely Islamic opposition with the intent to bring down the current regime, Assad. Turkey's interference in the conflict has put the region further on edge. On Friday, June 22nd, Syria shot down a Turkish plane that was illegally inside Syria's territory. The message that is being sent by both governments is clear. We are not afraid of war, but the people of the region are sick of war. The public in the Middle East, including Turkey, overwhelmingly oppose a NATO intervention in Syria. Syrians and Turks don't want to die for another man's war. They want peace and stability between Syria and Turkey. Syria is not experiencing a revolution, but coming under attack from foreigners, both near its borders like Syria, Saudi Arabia, and Israel, as well as more powerful ones in the West. Washington and London bear the greatest responsibility for the chaos and bloodshed in Syria. They are funding and arming terrorist groups who have no consideration for human life, the atrocious atrocities that have been committed against Syrian civilians have the fingerprints of the CIA, and yet Assad has unfairly received the blame for the violence because there is an American, Saudi, Israel plan to remove him from power, destroy Syria, and thereby de-link Iran from Hezbollah. Legendary journalist John Pilger warned of the dangers of mistaking Western propaganda for news. Is his latest article called "History is the Enemy: As Brilliant Psyop Become the News." Blatant psyops become the news. There we go. He said, the threats against Syria coordinate in Washington and London, scale new peaks of hypocrisy, contrary to the raw propaganda presented as news. The investigative journalist of the German daily Frankfurt identifies those responsible for the massacre in Hula as the rebels backed by Obama and Cameron. The paper's sources include the rebels themselves. This has not been completely ignored in Britain. Writing in his personal blog, ever so quietly, John Williams, the BBC World News editor, effectively dishes his own coverage, sensing Western officials who describe the PSYOPs operation against Syria as blatant as the destruction of Libya and Iraq and Afghanistan. During times like these, we have to remind ourselves that the suffering in Syria is not happening in a vacuum. The crisis in Syria and the Middle East cannot be separated from the crisis in America and the West. There is a political, economic, and above all, a spiritual crisis in the Western world. What is the West core identity? What are its values? What is it a perpetual war maker? Why is it exporting terror and weapons to Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, and other countries? Why are Western governments engineering death and destruction across the Middle East? What is the end game? The end game is to implode the countries and give a globalist run. But I understand that. What are our values now? Our values is to make war and to destroy other countries and be interventionist around the world. So, anyway, the West is not free. We are controlled by lies and led by liars. So everything we know about modern history and the world from the beginning is false. Truth appears, if at all, in the footnote of the book that is history. Who is the author of this book? What is his purpose? Who is this book declared to man? And is the end already written? Why is Washington decided to the destruction of truth and the proliferation of lies? America is the most propagandized country in the world, and its nation propaganda is being sold to the world as the real history of our time. This sad state of affairs needs to change. America and the whole world need to hear the truth about the real organize of the conflict in Syria. The false flag at 9/11 events, the CIA's overthrow of the Shia of Iran, and the secret plot to start World War III between Iran and Islam and Israel, America. That's a pretty powerful article. Very, very true. Sorry about that. I had to fix my mic there. A little bit too tight. Let's go to this next one. U.S. More drone flights over Caribbean. There we go. This is from the Boston Herald. Washington, after quietly testing Predator drones over the Bahamas for more than 18 months, the Department of Homeland Security plans to expand the unmanned surveillance flights into the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico to fight drug smuggling across the United States, officials say. U.S. officials. Yeah, good luck of fighting drug smuggling when it's the government that's doing more drug smuggling than the drug runners. It's because this is a drug running, gun running country, and it's imploding by design. And all it is for everybody to be spied on. That's the only reason why they bring these drones out. The move would dramatically increase U.S. drone flights in the Western Hemisphere, more than doubled the number of square miles now covered by the department's flight of 9 surveillance drones, which are used primarily on the northern and western U.S. borders. But the high-tech aircraft have had limited success spotting drug runners in the open ocean. The drones have largely failed to impress veteran military Coast Guard and drug enforcement agency officers charged with finding and boarding speedboats, fishing vessels, and shift submarines ferrying tons of cocaine and marijuana to America's coast. The question is, will they be effective? We have no systematic evidence on how effective they are. Yeah, how effective are they? Well, they crashed in Massachusetts, and they crashed in one in was it New Hampshire? I don't know, but they're not that necessarily that good. The only thing they're good for is to spy on everybody and steal everybody's homes. But hey, that's all right. Bruce Begley said, who studies U.S. counter narcotics effects at the University of Miami in Coronel, Florida, in Gables, Florida. And the article continues from there. Moving on here to the weaponized bird flu. Weaponized bird flu research published as a virus just mutations away from pandemic, from Elizabeth Renter. A scientific paper was released this week this past week after much the findings of the paper, some feared could be used to develop a highly concocious version of the Vaven H5N1 bird flu virus. While those fears have been largely been culled, the researchers' findings induct that a pandemic of H5N1 is just 3 mutations away. Currently, H5N1 can only be transmitted to humans from birds. It cannot pass from human to human like the cold virus or other infectious viruses. According to the Times of India, scientists say there are already some strains of the bird flu that are 3 mutations away from being passable by humans. With the information we have, it is impossible to say what the exact risk of the virus becoming airborne transmissible among humans, said Professor Dirk Smith of the one of the study authors. However, the results suggest that the remaining 3 mutations could evolve in a single human host, making a virus evolving in nature a potential serious threat. Yeah, and they could release that very soon. In order for H5N1 to become highly transmittable in humans, 5 different mutations would have to be presented. 2 of those 5 already existed. The other 3 were created by scientists and studied in the Furchus used because they transmitted the same viruses as humans. Bird flu research published among pandemic fears. Scientists stress that the virus that was airborne, transmittable, do not cause death in the I don't know why, but I cannot say that word. Caused death in the fetus. Easing some concerns among those who worried these findings could lead to intentional mutation being spread as a bioweapons. The virus did, however, kill those I can't even say the word. Yes. It loses me. I can also say I'm having a Floridian block for a second there. Fluoride block, in which high doses were directly into their nostrils. The research of findings have been under security for months as members of the scientific community debated on whether the information should be released. I'm sorry, but I can't believe it. I can't even read all this crap. I can read it, but I just cannot read it out loud. Sorry about that. There is always a risk, said Dr. Anthony S. Fuchs, director of the National Institute for allergy and infectious diseases, but I believe the benefits are greater than the risk. According to the New York Times statements made by the study's lead author, Ron A.M. Faucher, spawned much of the conversation leading up to the release of the findings. He reportedly raised alarms when giving interviews on the findings last fall. He said he had done something really, really stupid and had mutated the hell out of H5N1. He didn't. No. He did that on purpose. I did something really stupid. I kind of evolved it a little bit. I just, it was kind of a risk, but now we're going to release it on you. It'd kill massively amounts of humans, but that's okay. Because, hey, humans ain't human. What? We went on to characterize the results as very, very bad news, saying they had created probably one of the most dangerous viruses you can make. Since that time, his assumptions, I don't know, has died down, and he blames the media for overblowing the danger. Rather, the findings weren't as very, very bad as he originally thought, or if they are simply downplaying them as an afterthought remains to be seen. Moving on. I'm just speeding through the news right now because I just want to get this stuff done so I can start writing. This is really serious stuff, so I'm going to keep going. Even the AMA recommends pre-market safety testing of GMO foods. This week, the American from Elizabeth Renter. This week, the American Medical Association, the AMA, voted to refuse policy recommending that foods made with genetically modified organisms, GMOs, have pre-market safety testing in the battle against foods made with GMOs. We'll take any bit of advancement as a small victory, but far more needs to be done. Revised. I'm sorry, not refused, revise. The AMA held a meeting in Chicago to discuss the change. According to the Chicago Tribune, it was there that they voted on the policy, sending a clear signal to the Food and Drug Administration that more needs to be done to answer the calls of considered customers when it comes to GMO foods. Previously, the AMA has also voiced a potential support for the labeling of GMOs. As it stands, GMO foods are not subjected to any testing or measures beyond what any other foods are. Instead, they are simply encouraged to engage in a voluntary safety consideration with the FDA prior to releasing a GMO food onto the market. While the general public isn't privy to what goes on in these consultations, the FDA's status on GMO foods would lead one to believe they are pretty unremarkable. Some were hoping the AMA would come out in support of GMO labeling. More than 1 million Americans have signed a petition on the Just Label It website, sending a clear message to the FDA that we want to know what's in our food. 50 countries worldwide have already passed such legislation requiring GMO foods to be labeled as such. Yeah, they did that petition. I remember that, and I read that the fact that they said, well, we're just going to put that down as one petition. What? We're just going to write that down as one signature, like one signature or something. There was like 1 billion signatures or like 1 million, and they just deleted them right away. It's like, we don't need to label our foods. Heck, we don't need to do that. We don't need to warn them that they're going to be dying from GMO foods, from cancer and high rates of autism and high rates of diabetes and other diseases. We wholeheartedly commend AMA for coming out in support of monetary pre-market safety assessment of genetically engineered foods, said Michael Hansen of the Customers Union, but are disappointed that the AMA did not also support mandatory labeling. Studies in the scientific literature have suggested that genetically engineering could introduce the new food aldrines, increase the levels of known aldrines, rise allergies. There we go. Allergies. Increase the levels of allergies, rise or lower nutrient levels, and have adverse effects on the animals that eat such foods. What hasn't changed in AMA policy is their core belief that GMO foods are essentially no different than non-GMO foods. The FDA has not commented on the AMA recommendation, but did say new foods have an obligation under the Federal Food Drug Cosmetic Act to ensure that the foods they were consumers they offer consumers are safe and in compliance with applicable legal requirements in meeting their obligation. Firms do conduct pre-market safety testing. Why the heck am I talking like this? This is really stupid. I did read this before. I don't know why the heck probably because I'm like really tired. Went to bed at like 3. 2 companies are required to ensure food safety, but they aren't required to use objective research. In other words, it's their own scientists who are being paid to provide a safety evaluation. Can you guess whose side these scientists are on? Yes, likely the ones signing their paychecks. If you haven't already, take a moment to sign the Just Label It campaign. You can actually click on the link on Infowars.com and tell the FDA you GMO food labeled. They should label GMO foods, of course, because everything's going up. Cancer rates and autism's going up and stuff like that. So I'm going to end it right here. I am your host, Matt Maldonado, and I'm going to be signing off. Remember, United We Stand and Divided We Fall. And you can follow me on Facebook, Vimeo, YouTube, and planetinfowars.com. Thank you, and hopefully I will give you a better podcast show. Thank you. Goodbye.